Well, you're now on 19th question. Anybody else before? Yes.
I have a bunch of questions, but I'll just pick one. What would the implications be for having children if this does get into the DNA? And have you seen, instances with your practice, or how does this work with HIV?
Very good question, and again, we don't know the answer. Clinically, chronic fatigue syndrome does run in families. 20 years ago, the National Institute of Health said there is no family link or genetic link. And that's not true. They now have admitted that there are genetic links. It does run in families. One possibility is that it's a disease of mitochondria and that has a maternal to son transmission, but we don't really know about that. Clinicians will say, oh, there's no question that it runs in families. When it does occur in families, children usually get sick at around the time of puberty. So that of the many mothers who have had kids in my practice, the kids look just fine. The exam is normal, and they seem to act normal. Now, could the kids have more infections than if they didn't come from a family where chronic fatigue syndrome was present? It's possible, but here's where there's a lot of bias. Because mom is so sick with chronic fatigue syndrome, she's particularly worried, and so with every cold she brings the kid in, and so therefore it doesn't stand out in my mind. But I think that there is an increased risk. If XMRV turns out to be the cause, then I think that the first recommendation would be don't breastfeed the babies. And that's the same thing, because you can pass it in breast milk. On the other hand, we just don't know, and that'll probably be a good year before we really know anything like that. At this point, being cautious, if I was a mom about to have a baby and I had chronic fatigue syndrome, I would probably bottle feed that baby. The American Academy of Pediatrics is going to come after me for having said that, because, that goes against what they're trying to teach. And in general, I support what they say there, but I think that it would be a reasonable precaution, and it's not all that bad to bottle feed babies.
Is that what they do with HIV?
Yeah.
Or is there, okay, so that's really the concern then is breast milk. That's
yes. Now you can pass HIV at the time of delivery. Well, you can pass it prior to delivery through the placenta, and then at the time of delivery, particularly if babies swallow some of the blood. So C-section tends to reduce the incidence. This is no longer as much of a concern because with the antiretroviral drugs, you can reduce the viral load so much that the incidence of perinatal HIV infection has gone way down. Yes?
I guess I could ask you a question. I'm just wondering, how about some other early immune insult? Instead of XMRV being the culprit, an early immune insult that damages the immune system, showing disordered immune cells like autism, like a lot of people think with autism, and then leaving a quadrant immune system weak to allow viral infections, and sort of like what we see with HPV and HIV being so widespread in the population, but having no symptomatic expression.
I didn't understand the question.
What he's saying is that there could be previous immune insults that would lead to immune system deficiency that would lead to the virus.
That would, okay, I could accept that, but I don't know what people say or mean when they say, well, I had an immune problem. In general,
I mean, in the sense of, if you would expect that, you see other symptoms. For instance, the immune system develops between 1 and 7, and it's, and hence why breastfeeding is so important, because the mother passes on immune cells. So, and then at the same time, the immune system is doing self from non-self recognition. Is this safe? Is this safe? Is this me? Is this not me? And hence we see a real extreme expression of that in autoimmune diseases. So that. And if it were something like that, what you would think is just real dramatic results such as like autism make sense in that, some really global effects. Though, it's possible that different forms of it would express it itself, so that a certain quantity of damage would then result in a break point early, and then another quantity of damage would result to a break later on, as brought on by other, say, other environmental hits. I don't know if anyone's done that. And another way that, I guess another thought is, has anyone ever injected XM into animals to see what it would do in itself if we put it in correctly?
Right, we don't know, obviously. Now, it is a xenotropic virus, so that it's probably in other mammals. And, this is just at the beginning of looking at XMRV. Now, for years, it was looked at in mice, because that's where its first home was that it was found. And so that they used that as a research model. But I don't think that they really looked in other animals. And that, of course, is a concern. There has been some information on the web that sick pets has been something that has been an issue. We're just at the beginning of that, and we won't know the answer. But that doesn't answer your question about the immune hit. There are so many different things that are meant from it. Is multiple allergies an immune hit? Autoimmune disease. Usually it makes sense to me only if I can see the area of the immune hit. For example, the B cells. Well, then you have inability to make antibodies, and it will cause this whole type of disease. Totally different from chronic fatigue. If it's the CD4 cells, well, it will cause this kind of disease. So that in chronic fatigue syndrome, the area of immune system problems is primarily the NK cell and cytokine dysregulation. But the NK cell seems to be the one that stands out. And to me, that looks fairly specific.
Not to mention NK is not, it's an innate, so that you would, it's not like humoral, therefore you would,
that's right.
In the early immune cell, it would be less, you would expect less damage from like some sort of environmental hit.
Oh no, there are genetic diseases where you're born without NK cells.
Not genetic.
But there are people who have no NK cells. They do very poorly.
Yeah, I would expect they would die kind of quickly.
Yes.
Going back to the possibility of sexual transmission and the gender differences of disease expression, more women are diagnosed with chronic fatigue than men. Is it possible that they're passing it back and forth, and the women are getting the chronic fatigue and the men are getting prostate cancer?
I would doubt it. Did everybody hear the question? In general, if you have an illness, you don't pass it back and forth that way. This is a common misperception. A lot of my pediatric patients come in, and the doctor or the family will say, "Well, he's got a cold. He had a cold 2 months ago, and then 2 months before that. So it's just being passed back and forth." Actually, that's not true. It's a different virus each time. So once you develop an immunity to a certain viral infection, whether it's XMRV or any other, then you shouldn't get it back again. In fact, that holds up clinically. If you have a patient who has chronic fatigue syndrome and recovers 100%, meaning that they can go out and exercise, they can go to an all-night drinking party and not have a payback the next day, and they stay at 100% for at least 2 months, they won't get it again. I've only seen one person who has gotten it again over 25 years. On the other hand, if you have somebody who has chronic fatigue syndrome and almost gets better, they're back to 90%, but they still can't exercise the way they used to, they still can't push themselves, or else they'll have a couple of days where they feel lousy. They will fall down as time goes by. So I think that once somebody completely recovers, then they will not get it back again. And whether or not there's any relationship to prostate cancer, I kind of doubt it, because over the years I've always been watching for, some types of associations, and that's just never shown up in my observations.